I promise you this, Topher. There are small business owners, many of them. In fact, some are even listening to this show right now who will be sued as a direct result of this.
Yeah. They just don't know it, but it's coming.
100%.
Episode 201, my friend. You finally broke the big 200. Now the content's going to have to start getting good.
I'm celebrating with a wonderful cup of matcha tea.
Is it matcha tea or is it matcha latte?
I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. Although somebody did just tell me, apparently you have I ordered a matcha tea, and he went, "Oh, is this for Topher?" Normally it comes with water, but he has his with milk.
Did he sound so condescending?
Yeah, 100%. That was a direct impersonation.
All right, matcha latte, matcha tea, one of the two. But let's get into the news.
Either way, we're celebrating.
Yes.
So yeah, news of the week this week, massive. Look, we've spoken about the topic of the current times, artificial intelligence, specifically
Chat GPT.
Chat GPT. So look, this is coming, and it's just beginning to dawn on people now. It's almost like there's been a bit of hype. Everyone's excited. This is an amazing thing. It's going to leverage. It's going to upscale. It's unbelievable. Then there was challenges because the demand was so high.
Yep.
And now people are starting to see the problem. So check this out. Technical and legal challenges. Are we prepared for AI? Specifically, great example. So Holly Menger is how I hope you pronounce Holly's name. She's an illustrator. And under the Chat GPT experiment, because it's still in beta, the AI modeled answers based upon 32 pieces of her work. Right?
Yep.
So whether you want to call it modeling or whether you want to call it copyright infringement, it depends on who you talk to. So the machine learning model was able to replicate her style on a new concept.
Yeah. Well, now this wasn't Chat GPT that did it because that's all text. This was visual, but same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So I mean, here's a bit that's interesting. As she's raised this objection, understandably so, some experts are saying, look, it's clearly meets the threshold for copyright infringement, and it could have legal challenges. She could sue for damages, royalties, etc. However, some experts are the opposite because it's generated by AI. It's not a human being.
But she's got a good point, right? Like, why would they need to hire her if they can hire AI to do it in 100th of the time that she can do it?
And this is where we're in a new world. I mean, Beth said, if you look at the internet and how long it took to evolve to hold, for example, the social media companies responsible for dangerous content. Like, who's responsible?
By the way, we still don't even have those laws. Like the laws still aren't even firm in place with regard to the internet. And now we have this?
We live in fast-changing times, and the problem is technology is growing more quickly than the speed at which the legislators can write the law.
Well, that's probably also the problem, is that most of these legislators don't even know how to spell PC. This is good. This is good reference for why we need to be electing officials that are in their that are in their 20s, because at least they have some assimilation of what's happening.
Well, maybe, but all I know is that the people listening to this, you need to stay aware because times are changing. There's going to be massive disruption.
Well, and here's the thing. Small business owners that are already turning to Chat GPT to write all of their content, to write their emails, it's only a matter of time before that is looked at as a copyright infringement as well.
100%. I promise you this, Topher, there are small business owners everywhere. In fact, some listening to this show right now who are going to get sued directly as a result of this.
Absolutely. They just don't know it yet, but it's coming for sure.
100%. Yeah. So I think it's important to be aware of what the potential risks are. I mean, look, there's algorithms out there now that can tell code that can tell this was generated by AI.
Yes, that's right. They've already developed bots that can identify if a bot is writing something, which is just crazy. And now they've developed bots that will rewrite it to sound like a human.
Now, to make it, I'm confusing myself, but to make it more, everybody hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable. Since the start of the internet, since the start of time, you've always got the people that got nefarious activities, they're trying to take advantage, and then the people that are trying to protect. So, whether it be antivirus, whether it be, it's talking about the use of AI for phishing attacks, business email compromise, etc., and more day-to-day of students creating new content and to depict their own work, but there's already algorithms can say, hey, this is a 98% likelihood this was generated by AI. Yeah, like educators are already. I had a conversation with people in the education field. They're already aware of this. They already know that this is a problem now, and it's only going to get bigger. So it's going to be an interesting time to be alive.
You know what? And what's interesting is when you start now looking at the power of algorithms to detect and predict behavior combined with Chat GPT, it's only a matter of time before somebody develops a virus which is completely customized to your algorithmic preferences to where it'll increase the likelihood of you clicking on it and having it installed in your computer. That's frightening.
It's interesting times. Although I'll offer you this. So this is an excerpt from the book The Crux, which I recommended as my book of the year last year. So I'm paraphrasing slightly. But approximately 40 years ago, some university or other, they did a, hey, guys, let's project the future. Let's imagine what of mankind's problems will we have solved, right? And people said things like, we're going to have cured cancer. We're going to have flying cars. We're going to have an automatic language translation. And they had a list of 6 or 7 different things.
This was the movie Back to the Future. Hoverboards.
Right. Yes, we're going to have solved the world's energy problems because we're going to have figured out nuclear fusion, etc. And 40 years later, of the 6, 7, or 8 things that are on the list, the only one that's even close to being complete is the automatic language translation.
Wow.
And what was interesting, and what the authors of the book pointed out, is technology evolves in waves, and it's definitely not predictable. Because what these students 40 years ago did not predict is we're all going to be walking around with access to all of mankind's knowledge
on our phones,
on a device
phone,
that you carry around in your pocket and you can connect to anywhere. So they didn't predict that. So we don't know where it's going. So the point there, I believe, the author's trying to make is whatever we're predicting is going to be the future, it won't be that.
Is in the future, right,
100%.
Yeah. So we're projecting wearables next. We're probably missing that one, and it's still going to be something in the palm of our hand. Who knows? I don't know. It's crazy. But I will say this. If you're a small business owner using Chat GPT, use with caution.
Beware.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. Let's talk about the fail of the week, my friend.
Brilliant. I'm excited about this. It's not that I'm excited, but fail of the week is second time entrance. Only our second time entrance.
Yes.
Up there with Sam Bankman-Fried. It's Alex Jones.
Loser.
And I want to say, are we regressing into children? No, I think it's justified. Yeah. We called it here on this podcast. We said he was going to be made bankrupt, and he has.
Nana boo-boo. Right. Alex Jones.
So, I mean, for clarity, everybody, this is the gentleman who owns InfoWars, he might soon not own. The insolvency practitioner is going to own it. And he said that Sandy Hook, the mass shooting atrocity, was fake and didn't happen, etc., etc. He got
among many other bullshit coming out of his mouth. Yes. Yeah,
100%. And ultimately, it was over $1 billion. It was 750 million, I think, when we recorded the podcast, and you said it'll be over $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's
over $1 billion.
Correct. Yeah. And now his liabilities are between 1 and 10 billion, and he's only got between 1 and 10 million in assets.
I don't buy that for a second, by the way. I think he's hiding a lot. So he will file bankruptcy. His company may go under. But at the end of the day, he's got some money in a bank account somewhere keeping him happy.
Well, it's funny. You're at risk of joining him in the conspiracy theory camp. You may very well be right. I don't know. I mean, overall, I don't think the legal system in the UK or the US is perfect. But I've got fundamental belief in the intent of it. So I think it was. I think justice was served in that he was found guilty, that he was prosecuted, and there's going to be consequences.
Well, I mean, like if he has certain financial investments in America are protected from bankruptcy and they can't be touched. So I guarantee you, he's got his money set out in enough different places that some of those things are going to be protected.
And also, I'm not going to dig. I mean, let's take it away from him. I mean, who are we? Casually, without having given it deep thought, as to say why are certain assets protected.
I'm American. That's my right, is to have an opinion without deep thought.
Well, you know what? There's too many jokes there. Not enough time. And because what's interesting is whether you want to talk about him, Sam Bankman-Fried, or whether you want to talk about somebody just controversial but not criminal. Actually, I couldn't even I was trying to be diplomatic in how I would it. Take something like Donald Trump, right? The fact is, you can take away certain things, and they've got a fan base. They've got a following, which means that
they can always rebuild.
As much as I do not enjoy Alex Jones, there are options. He has a personal brand which appeals to some that will be monetized.
Sadly, appeals to a lot.
Well, and then now we're into a bigger. We're turning into Victor Meldrew. You don't even know who Victor Meldrew is.
No, who's this?
So it's an old TV show in the UK, and it was an old guy who he had a tagline which was like, I don't believe it. It was basically a grumpy old man that used to just sit the whole episode and complain about life and how the whole world was going to shit.
Yes, that is who we are becoming.
Correct.
No question about it.
So I think, look, he's still getting sued, but I suppose the lesson, and it kind of rhymes with the news of the week, is I'm certain that when he made those accusations, he didn't foresee that it was going to go down this path. Mm-hmm. And I think you should be aware and conscious of the potential ramifications. In fact, here's a great example. So if you're a business owner listening to this message goes out worldwide. I forget how many countries around the world that this podcast is listened in, but it's quite a few. I have conversations with...
All but China. Tiananmen Square. There we go. We just got banned from China.
Honestly, Topher, I just want to say, talking about legal disclaimers, Topher isn't employed by my company. His views are are not reflective of the views of my company.
I made no opinion. I just simply said the word so the bots would track it.
Anyway, so the point is, but when we talk about some controversial topics, I will go to my lawyer. I've got a lawyer on retainer. It's always an interesting sign when you've got a lawyer on speed dial. He's number 3 in my phone.
That's scary.
So
am I number 2?
You're not on my speed dial. Anyway, so his name's Michael, and I'll often say, great, let me bounce this off you. And he'll say, yes, no, don't cover that topic. Or if you do, say it this way. So, look, guys, be educated because people don't see it. So I used to hate lawyers and figure it's all a waste of money. But really what it really is, good legal life, it's an insurance policy.
Yeah, absolutely. But by the way, this kind of reminds me of The Road Less Stupid, the book that is one of your favorite books, in that so many things that happen, the downfalls of business owners isn't because they didn't do something good enough. They just did one thing really stupid.
Right, yeah. So Keith Cunningham, and one of my favorite business books of all time. Mm-hmm. He calls it the dumb tax.
Yes.
Right, and so his phrase is, it's not about how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. It's not about doing smart things, it's doing less stupid things. Yeah. And he's 100% right. And so morally, judge Alex Jones or not, the fact is, where are you exposed legally? What are you not thinking about? Mm-hmm. Where do you not see risk, or you're underestimating the risk that there is?
And do you have somebody who's willing to point that out? That's an important thing as well, right? Because small business owners, we tend to be alone a lot. We tend to make a lot of decisions on our own. It's important to have like that network of people who can sit there and go, hang on, buddy, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. Which is reminding back to the power of a mastermind.
I was going to say, power of mentors, power of a mastermind. I mean, twofold. I spend half my time on mentoring calls. I did a load of mentoring calls today. Half my time is showing entrepreneurs where the opportunities are and leverage opportunities that they don't see yet. Yep. And the other half is trying to talk them out with stupid shit. Right, it's saying, look, you're being crazy, and it's scaring them. I mean, I'll give the legal example. So the reason why I've got oil on retainers, I don't actually do that much work. Most of our conversations are about
for the record, I do most of the work.
What did Topher do when I rang him up? He goes, what did Topher do this time? So it is often him just educating me. So it's like, okay, it's an insurance policy. I'm thinking about doing this. What do I need to consider? And it's also, I'll say, okay, hypothetically, there's one going on right now. There's an investment of mine that kind of went wrong and sadly the company failed. And it's like, okay, right, this is the situation. What's the state of play? Mm-hmm. What would have happened if this had happened? So I'm getting educated in advance so I can avoid the pitfalls. And that's true
Let's go more specifics on this, because this is a good thing to talk about. You made an investment a couple of years ago, not a huge one, under 100,000. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you've been getting good payments. Did you make all? You didn't make all the money back yet.
I did.
You made all the money back.
Yeah.
But you didn't get the investment. The initial investment is still out there, and they still technically owe that to you, right?
Yeah. So simplistically, let's just call it 100 grand. There's 100 grand invested in the company, and the dividends over the last 2 or 3 years of that have been in excess, only modestly, but in excess of £100,000.
But
however, I still own the company.
Yes.
I still have that stake, so I've still got that 100 grand's worth, which in theory the company was intended to scale and then be exited, and then you have your capital gain, right? You turn your 100 into $1 million, and you've had dividends along the way.
And you're on the board. You have a vote.
Correct.
Yep. And now you get the opportunity to vote against your own personal best interests.
Yeah, I mean, look,
based upon the advice from your attorney.
I suspect if Michael, if you listen to this, I apologize. I do not want to discuss this. Topher's thrown me under the bus. It's his fault. So look, I'm not going to comment to the specifics as we get in dubious legal territories ever since it's especially since it's active.
Yes, but we're not mentioning the company at all, the exact amount. And you're doing the right thing, which I think was very impressive.
Well, and the point to move away from the tactics is just to say it's important to be educated. It's important to be smart so you know what to do. So after this happened, I'm like, oh, shit, this problem is going to cost me 100 grand. The following day I was in a bad mood, and my partner, Laurie, said, is that because you lost 100 grand? And
you were like, no, it's because I have to do a podcast with Topher.
That's a good punchline. And I looked up and I went, no, I'm not even thinking about it. Because, don't get me wrong, it sucks. Yeah, sure. Nobody wants to lose 100 grand, right? I don't care what money you have. But the fact is, it was weighed up. I'm dialed in. Yeah. It's how do you then make the best of a bad situation? What you don't want, where the panic and the fear, and the people listening to this, whatever your legal challenges are right now, normally the challenge isn't the problem itself, it's your lack of clarity. So example
really good.
Example from yesterday, day before, a family friend looking to move countries, and she was freaking out and she was anxious about the amount of money it was going to cost her because she has this job opportunity and she's completely freaking out. And we'll just call her Sarah.
Because that's her name.
Yeah. So Sarah's freaking out and making a big drama, and I'm looking at her going, this isn't a problem. And she went, oh, no, I haven't got the money. And I went, no, Sarah, you think the problem is not having the money. I think the problem is lack of clarity about how much money you need.
Interesting.
And she went, what do you mean? So I dragged her in. I said, well, look, you need to know basically your incomings and outgoings between now and then, and what it's going to cost you and how much you have and how much you're going to earn between now and then. So she needs a cash flow forecast.
Right. Yes.
Right? And this person was worried because in a short space of time, 3 months, she needs to have a spare. It was only $5,000, but $5,000 to her, Topher, because she's a low income earner. Sarah's young, is like, I don't know, 500 grand might be you and I. It's like, it's not an unachievable goal, but it's a significant amount. It's a significant amount of money, right? It's like, oh my God, I've got. But as soon as I did the cash flow, I helped her realize it wasn't 500 grand. It was £288 that she actually needed.
That's amazing,
right? Yeah. And then she felt better. Now she's still got a problem to solve because there's not just that little bit of extra cash, which for her is like probably you or I having 10 grand. Like, all right, fine. But there are other problems that have got to be solved. But as soon as she's clear about what the problem actually is, now we can break it down and it's infinitely more solvable, right? So that's what I want people listening to this to be thinking about. It's like, okay, back to the crux. What are the issues that are holding us back? What are the risks? And as soon as we get really clear and granular, not just I'm hoping the business is going to grow, what are the problems? What are the challenges? What do we need to overcome? It becomes much more solvable. Absolutely. And then the fear subsides, and now we can crack on with growing the business.
All right. Well, I tell you what, let's crack on and talk about the hero of the week, which I'm going to love because you've labeled me the socialist in this podcast. So it's all about the little guy.
Yeah, listen, I like this. So this is leaseholders winning over the freeholder, right? So specifically, it's an example of a block of flats in Canary Wharf. And the leaseholders won against the landlord for overpaying $1.6 million in excessive service charges. Wow. Right? And it's little guy versus the big guy, because they're levying things that aren't transparent. So they're like the landlord had two companies,
referral fees, things like that. I think.
Yeah. So the ultimate owner, the beneficial owner, kind of a property tycoon, owned the property, but he also has so he's a freehold owner, but he also had a management company, and therefore the management fees, correct?
Yes.
And the management fees he was charging were exorbitant and excessive. Okay, and then ultimately the leaseholders took him to court and won, and he has to give the money back, and now this is likely to have copycat issues, right? Because the problem with the law,
well, is it a copycat, or is it now going to set a precedent for other people that have been screwed by greedy landlords?
Well, you could say precedent, right? Yeah. So on the one hand, I like it because the challenge in law, especially as it relates to small business owners, is I'm sure Michael's having a fit about this episode, but the fact is, he should be paying me to say stupid shit so he makes more money. I'm going to call him. So the point is, my opinion, and a lot of business owners' opinion is, the old cliche, possession is 9/10 of the law. Said differently, for business, so not criminal law, but in business kind of litigation, I'm going to say whoever's got the most money wins. Yeah, usually that's true. So when people have the big guys versus the little guys, like, you can drag things through, you can take it in time. I know somebody. I'm not going to mention names, and I'm also going to say I do not like this person. It was Bob. Yes. So Bob, who on plenty of times sues people and threatens them just for fun. Yeah. Like, it's an intimidation tactic that he likes to play, because he knows that he can get compensation from people, basically threatening them, and so he's in fact, great book, Topher. Have you read this book? Hang on. I don't remember the guy's name, but I know what you're going to say is that lawsuits is a legitimate business strategy, is what you're going to quote, right? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No? Albeit that's true. And that's from the Dan Penny book, First 100 Million. First 100 Million. I was going to say Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I have read that, and I understood about 10% of it. Okay, fine. Well, the short version of this book was this guy worked for the US government, I believe, and effectively they went to third world countries and used to lend them a massive amount of money for infrastructure development. But here's where it was interesting. They would structure it so that on paper, in theory, the country could get it, then they'd grow their economy and they could pay the loans back. It was based on this sky in the pie dream that if they did this, they would make all of this money, and they knew up front that it was never going to happen. Right, well, it was kind of like startup business owners. Right? It's like, oh yeah, this is going to transform everything. But the interest rates were high, and so while on paper it kind of worked, in practice it didn't. And there were two things that were interesting. One was, then why did they do this? It was so that these companies were then indebted to the US government, arguably, or at least this is what the author puts out, to men that they owed them political and military favors. Yep, right? And they would get land as well. They knew going in right away they would default, and they'd have to pull back and they would get land. But that wasn't the best bit. That wasn't the best bit. The best bit for me was the fact that in these contracts, so let's say there was, $50 billion in building a highway or whatever, like infrastructure development in these countries, it would have to be spent with US firms. Yes, that's right. So yes. Effectively, the US government was using its power to say, look, we will lend you money so you can spend it to buy our services. Even though it wasn't directly from the US government, but it's coming back into the US economy in the form of taxes. Because the US corporations do the work, make the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, so on the one hand, you could say, good for America, but bad for everybody else. And it does remind me of small business owners. So from the negative sense, it's like, oh, the big evil guy, so you get yourself educated so you don't get yourself screwed. Because, by the way, the law is the only thing which, if you've got a knowledge advantage, as in stuff other people don't, a little piece of paper can swing. One little injunction being filed that's successful can like derail massive organizations and businesses. So being legally educated is important. On the positive side, by the way, if I try and strip away the dubious morals of the US government, I'm not making many friends on this podcast, am I? You could just say, align yourself with people with influence and power. Yeah. Right? You kind of go, okay, like, who is the strategic partner that's going to grow your sales. If you're aligned with somebody that's strategically strong and growing, as the US government was at the time, still the dominant power in the world, but it's arguably declining. But in the 70s and 80s, which is the area that this person was writing the book about, it was strong and growing, dominant world power. You kind of go, if you're aligned with that strong growing force, you win.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in AI right now, it's almost like you can't, it's quite hard to go wrong.
Just don't screw it up and you'll be okay.
You just aligned.
Yeah. By the way, this kind of reminds me of, there's the Netflix documentary out right now. I think, I don't, is it called Gawker? Or is it, but it's about Gawker getting shut down because of Peter Thiel.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen this yet?
No.
Oh, you will love this documentary, and I'm going to have to do some search. We'll put it in the show notes. But basically, really weird story. So Hulk Hogan, remember the wrestler?
Yes.
Got involved with a sex tape thing with his best friend and blah, 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 and went to sue Gawker for defamation or libel or something. I'm not sure what it was. And like, he had money coming out. Like, nobody knew how he's getting all of these attorneys and why they're staying at 5-star hotels. And just what you're saying about the money and the power, they can write it out. They won this lawsuit and basically bankrupted Gawker. But what they found out was, after it was all done, the person funding the lawsuit was Peter Thiel, because he had an axe to grind against Gawker, and he used that lawsuit to shut him down. And it was from a simple, he knew the law. His lawyers knew the law better than the defense lawyers, and they pulled back one of the claims in the lawsuit. And by pulling off one of the claims in the lawsuit, they were able to go for personal finances of the owners of Gawker, and they made it very personal and just crushed them. It's an incredible story. Yeah.
You just sparked a very distant memory in my past.
Mahesh, I'm sorry about all this, but this is fun.
A very, very long time ago. You know it's bad when I'm having...
First off, you're not that old, so it can't be that long ago.
It's more than 15 years.
Okay, to old people, that's not a long time.
Yeah, okay. But yeah. It feels many lifetimes ago. It's pre-marriage, pre-children, right? Okay. So, and I was in my 20s, so I was a baby. Let me think how I can do this without getting sued. Michael, I'm thinking about you. You're in my ear. So, I was a tiny business in a particular industry, and there was the Google in that industry that was dominant. And I had a very wealthy individual who'd exit that industry, give me money to dominate Google AdWords in a specific category simply because he wanted the Google company to fail, because he had a personal axe to grind.
And we're putting air quotes around the word Google. It wasn't actually Google. It was the size of the company.
Yeah, it was the leading competitor in this particular niche. Wow. I remember, because I went to him because he'd been in this industry and exited. Okay, wow. He'd been in this industry and exited. And I'm being very careful now. Very, very careful. He'd been in this industry and exited. And I was still in it. So I was like, I befriended him. Again, mentoring,
and by the way, in your 20s, you probably weren't even thinking legal consequence either.
No,
you just had some guy going, this is great.
Not. So I was actually trying to pick his brains to help my business grow.
Yeah.
All right, great. Like, this was good and interesting. And he went, look, this company is weak because all their leads are being generated by Google AdWords. Again, this was before Facebook advertising. There wasn't the availability. Sure. And like, all the leads are coming from here. So it's a cash cow. It's a behemoth. Right? And he said, if you can dominate AdWords, you'll bleed them out and they'll die. And he goes, I know that they're spending X per month, because he had somebody on the inside. And he goes, I'll support you. I'll finance you, because I didn't have the resources. Wow. He's like, so I just kind of, if you give me this money, and we cut a deal. And whilst I'll say, fast forward, it was short-lived. He changed his mind pretty quickly. The fact is, we did really hurt him. And that company, while it didn't fail, it fell from grace, and it ceased to be number one in its industry. And whilst my company grew, it didn't unseat them. So it's not a David and Goliath story. But the point is, you've got to be very careful about not to make enemies and who's got an axe to grind against you. So you want to be legally educated. You want to be switched on. But also understand who the power players are.
No question about it. No question about it. All right, my friend, let's move on. Let's talk about the book of the week.
I love this book. Topher, this has got to be in my top 10 favorite business books of all time.
Wow.
And it's massively, massively underappreciated. So let me see if I can sell you on it. So it's called Outsiders, right? Which is about 8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success. Okay? So effectively, it's talking about, I forget the criteria in the book, the specific criteria, but it's saying, look, it's not about the businesses that just grow profit by the most. Okay? Because while that's good, you can grow revenue, it's not about revenue. Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. But actually, it's relative to the capital that's invested. Right? See, if your company was at $1 million and you get 100 million worth of VC investment, you better be growing at a rate of knots to justify the return, right? So it was talking all about the return on assets, return on equity, the earnings per share increase. And this book makes a very simple premise. It takes, based upon this criteria, so not just simply market cap, like the company growth,
right?
But actually in terms of this return to shareholders or earnings per share, I forget what it was specifically. This book goes, right, there are 8 CEOs that have been better than everybody else. And I should have reminded myself of this podcast who number 1 was. But somewhere in the top 8 is obviously the man, the legend, Warren Buffett. And has been one of the 8 best people of all time. But what the book argues, and there's some big famous names like Warren Buffett in there and how they did it, but there's also people that you've never heard of.
That's the exciting story.
And whoever was number 1, and the amount of wealth that it's mind-blowing, because they also say, look, they've got to get growth, but it's got to be relative to the capital invested and length of time. They've got to sustain that for 10 or more years.
Will this be applicable to small business owners as well,
100%.
or just be good entertainment?
Well, it'll be both. And here's the 2 points. So here's the point which hopefully in the first chapter will make your ears prick up. It says, look, most books out there...
Did you just say my ears prick up?
Yeah.
Is it prick up? It's perk.
It's prick up.
Perk.
Prick up.
Perk.
Prick up. Comment below.
All right, yeah. Is it prick or perk?
This is the kind of Mahesh that you love. Mahesh is. So by the way, we should say for context, Mahesh is
is the one guy who complained. Actually, he didn't complain. He likes the show. You made it sound like he complained.
He complained.
A little bit of a complaint.
Anyway, so I feel like we now have to explain the secret in-joke to the...
we should.
So Topher and I were at a mastermind event, and our CEO mastermind, and Mahesh was there, and we had a conversation about this. And Mahesh basically said, I listen to your podcast when I'm working out at the gym, and guys, you spend 20 minutes talking about bullshit before you actually get to the content. So, and here we are again.
But then he pressed it by saying, just make sure that you just say, Mahesh, you can tune out now for this part. So I'm wondering if he will be annoyed if we've gone on and derailed talking about him. Right? Well,
Mahesh, this is why the fast. This is why you've got a fast forward button. This is why.
He'll be rewinding this because he'll be able to listen to him.
Oh my word! Anyway, I forgot what we were actually talking about. Oh yes, so here's the point. So the 2 points. It argues in the first chapter when your ears pricked up. So is the most business books are all about operational development, i.e. how do we grow our profits, growing revenue, reducing expense ratios, growing profits. But it argues this is not where it's at. The outsiders, the real leaders, that is a completely separate category of skill. So there's operational excellence, that's where most CEOs are focused, but it's actually capital allocation.
Interesting.
So in other words, how is that money that's generated, the free cash flow that's generated by the operation, by the operational efficiency, how is it reinvested into assets? And it's got a few different categories. You have to read the book. For big public companies, it's repurchasing its own shares. But for small business owners, you could say it's either investing in assets that help that core business grow or a separate acquisition.
Versus, by the way, just giving yourself a big-ass paycheck, which is something we are going to address in a future episode as we talk about a CEO who voluntarily took a $40 million pay cut. Got to stay in.
I'm
so
excited.
make sure you subscribe and like to the podcast so you can find out about that one.
I'm looking forward to that. So in this book, it almost opened up my eyes to a whole new avenue for how if your company's established and you're operationally smart, you're a B2B business owner with 7 figures of revenues, profitable, decent balance sheets. Yeah. It's kind of like, as much as I hate to use the term, next level shit. Like it's about the allocation of capital into other assets, other acquisitions. It's a brilliant book.
Awesome. All right, cool. I look forward to reading that one. By the way, and I'm about halfway through the crux, and I'm loving it. It is a very good book. Anyway, let's talk about the quote of the week.
All right, quote of the week. This is by Potter Stewart, who is a U.S. judge, who says, topical for this week, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do.
Just to clarify, he said ethics, not ethnics.
I said ethics.
Yeah, but it's halfway sounded like ethnics, and I just want to be sure we're clear. For people listening to the podcast, couldn't see it on screen.
Because that
it's a totally different meaning.
That's different legal issues.
Yes. I'm looking out for you on that one. Yeah. But I love that quote.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, it reminds me, going back to The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham's, when he talks about core values, it's do the best you can, do the right thing, and show people that you care. And it's like, yeah, well, you know what? And it's Warren Buffett 101. It's kind of like, it takes decades to build a reputation, minutes or seconds to destroy it. Just like, fundamentally, you can solve a lot of problems by just doing the right thing.
Well, listen, I just heard my dog shaking, so that must mean that we are coming toward the end of this episode. So why don't you take us out of here with your famous last words, my friend?
If you want a better business, you need to become a better business owner. I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 Steps to Improving Your Profits and Cash Flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.